Hello and welcome to today's episode of the Work at Home Rockstar podcast. Very excited for today's guest. This one's a unique one. We've got an entrepreneur and the founder of Emmy's Best Pet Products. And what they do is they help solve common problems that pet owners have. So very excited to be rocking out today with Kevin Rizer. Kevin, are you ready to rock?
Tim, I am so ready to rock. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Right on. By the way, you've also written a book called Always Wear Pants, which I'm hoping we hear a little bit more of in the guest solo. But before we get to that, I'd like to start off on a good note. So tell me a story of success in your business or your life that we can be inspired by.
Yeah, thanks so much, Tim. I think for me, the thing that sticks out the most is just the variety of things I've been able to do working remotely, working from home. I've worked for other people. I've worked for myself. I've started and sold businesses. I hosted a podcast, all from home, and over the last 10 years or so. And it's been a journey, and of course, over the last year and a half, we've all borne witness to just how many people can do how many things working from home. And so it's been fun to see other people figure out, what you and I have known for some time now, which is that the sky really is the limit when it comes to things that you can do working from home.
Yeah, I agree 100%. That's why I started the podcast back in 2015 was because I saw that was the way of the future. I just didn't realize that it was going to get that push over the last couple of years that it did, right?
Yeah, absolutely. When it first happened, when everyone went into lockdown the first time, nothing about working from home was different for me. I was used to being in sweatpants all day and not having to worry about whether my hair was combed and not having to worry about the 10-minute or the hour-long commute. I had a 10-step commute from my bedroom. What was unique was seeing everyone else, the friends, the neighbors, the family members start to figure it out and to watch them have successes and things along the way.
Yeah, and also take it a lot more seriously too, because I found that before the lockdowns and stuff, it wasn't as normal, I don't think, to say, oh no, I'm working from home, or
Yeah.
I can't help you move today because I'm working.
Right.
Really? Don't you just work for yourself? You'll be fine. Come on, help me. Right.
That's so true. There was kind of a stigma to it. It's as if, people that weren't familiar with it kind of thought we were all in our mom's basement playing video games all day. When you tell the guy at the coffee shop or in the elevator that you work remotely, there wasn't that same level of kind of prestige or seriousness. And now you see CEOs of Fortune 500 companies, you see attorneys and doctors and all kinds of people working remotely, for sure.
Yeah, I love it. And I mean, when you do start working from home, you realize that, all the major savings that you get from not having that physical office. And so it's really, really encouraging to see other businesses do that. Because I mean, this is really going to be a huge benefit for especially small businesses that don't really have the money to be able to put together a massive office. Now they can hire more people rather than put it into physical offices, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And you see some of the world's biggest, most successful companies abandoning plans for expanding their headquarters or, downsizing and opting for hybrid workplaces instead of big fancy offices. It really does speak to kind of a level of excess in the workplace that we've seen that really has ballooned over the last decade or two. And now people and companies are figuring out that it's not all necessary, that we can really do with a lot less. And to your point, I hope that means that they can invest more in their people and more in their products and more into serving their customers.
Yeah, I hope so. Now, okay, so it's not all sunshine and roses, as you know, I'm sure. And so sometimes things don't go quite as planned, and I call that the bad note. So, can you share with me some things that just didn't go very well? Maybe something that we can either avoid or, if it's unavoidable, how can we recover from it if it happens to us?
Yeah, great question, Tim. And for me, it's a huge technological failure and also a failure in my part to imagine that would be possible. So this was around 5 years ago. And at that time, I used to host a lot of podcasts and webinars and things of that nature. And I had a webinar coming up, and I was so excited because I had about 700 people registered, if my memory serves me correct. It was the largest audience we were ever going to have for a live webinar. And I had blocked off the time, I had prepared, I had picked out my outfit, I had rearranged my schedule, I had put the do not disturb sign outside of my home office door. And about 2 minutes before the webinar was to start, the internet crashes. And I freaked out. I didn't know what to do. I'm trying to text someone on our team so that they can try and get in and let people know. And it took about 20 minutes for things to get back up and running. And by that time, most of the people had moved on with their day. And so it was a huge lesson for me to really imagine and to plan for the worst. You know, they always say plan for the worst and hope for the best. And it's so true. You know, when you're working remotely, technology failures are just a part of it. And so the next day I researched and bought a little battery powered backup that was just enough power to be able to power my home office, my computer, my router, because the internet actually came on, you know, within a minute or so. So had I had a power source, I would have been able to get back up and running much sooner. It was the lack of power for almost half an hour that made it so unbearable. So have a plan, let people know what to expect if things don't go, have an alternate way to contact people. That's the big takeaway, or at least it was for me.
Wow. Okay. I would like to know what happened out of that. Like, so you had 700 people, they went on with their day. Like, how did you damage control that one?
Yeah, in that case, I was just honest. I sent out an email and let people know what had happened, tried to inject a little humor and humanity into it, because I think people, when we let people down, I think it's our job to own up to it and not to point the finger or place blame elsewhere, but just to be real with people. People understand, they get it. And so we sent out an email, we rescheduled the webinar for a few days later, and it was fine. I went into it without a hitch, knowing that I had a backup generator just in case.
Nicely done. And I think that theme keeps on coming up, that, you know, when we do make mistakes, you know, it just shows more of our humanity. And when people are doing business, they want to do business with people that are real. And so sometimes having these mistakes end up kind of getting you a little bit further. I mean, of course, if you didn't have the mistake, that would be better. But if you
Right.
do, and then you own up to it, you actually do build a little bit more credibility, I think, when you actually own up to your mistakes and you know, reach out to them. Because I mean, you could have easily just went and hid under a rock and said,
Right.
oh my God, I'm never going to do this again, and they never would have heard from you again, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. I think, especially if you're in a position of influence, if you have an audience, and if you have a customers, you have an audience. And sometimes people can put us on a pedestal, rightly or wrongly, but they think that we're superhuman, or they think that we're super busy, or we're super important. And so it shows a lot of humanity to pull back that cape and to say, you know what, at the end of the day, I'm just like you. You know, things happen, I make mistakes, I sometimes fall short. And I think that it is endearing to people when you can be honest about that and share a little bit of that with them. Generally speaking, it in my experience at least, it draws people closer to you rather than pushing them further away. And that's not to say that it's easy, or that that's always my first instinct. There's been plenty of times I've wanted to go hide under a rock, and probably a few where I have. But along the way, I've just learned that you know, people respect authenticity a lot more than they do, you know, the shiny image that so many people try to put out as if everything is perfect all the time.
Yeah, 100%. So that leads to the next topic, which is really talking about the jam room, and, you know, where you do business in your house. And it's funny that you mentioned the backup power source, because that's a great idea. Actually, I just went and bought one a couple weeks ago,
Good.
because, you know, we're going into winter, and yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where I mean, yeah, okay, your laptop will run, but your internet won't if it's plugged into the wall. So you do need something like that. But I'm wondering, how do you approach setting up your jam room?
Yeah, such a great question, Tim. And this is a little bit different for everyone. So I think it's worth mentioning that you really have to start with taking a look at your needs and adapting a space that's going to be most conducive to you and to the work that you're doing. But a couple of generalities that apply in most situations. I always say that the best situation is any place that you can make your own for work. And for some people, it's great if that's a room that is its own space that has a door that closes, right? And that way, if there's other people living with you, if there's other things happening in the house, you have that closed off space, and that can be your home office, and you protect that turf. But that's not always possible. Lots of us live in a flat with other friends or family members, some of whom may also be working from home. So sometimes it's good enough to find that corner of the basement or that spare bedroom that's not being used, or even just a corner of the kitchen table or a corner of the living room. But find a space and make it your own for those hours that you are working. Secondarily, I think it's so important to have the proper setup when it comes to a desk and a chair. So a desk needs to be able to fit your computer if that's what you're working on, and all of your accessories, all the things that you need. I personally like a standing desk, so that I can stand up a couple times a day and raise that desk up. You need a comfortable chair that not just looks cool. That's great if you have a chair that looks cool, but it needs to be ergonomically supportive of you. One of the easiest ways to get injured working from home is to be using a chair that's not supportive. And then the last little tidbit that I would say is you need some things that inspire you, that motivate you, that remind you of what you're working for. So I always like to customize my workspace with pictures of friends or family members, could be a pet, could be a vision board or a dream board of what you're trying to accomplish or goals that you hope to achieve. But no one wants a bland, workspace. This is your home. It's not the cubicle up at some corporate building. So make it your own.
Love it. Love it. That was very succinct. You've done this before, haven't you?
Just a time or two, Tim. You have too.
Right on. No, I agree with all that stuff, and especially the personality aspect of it. Yeah, you've got to have something that makes you feel inspired. But also, like, the ergonomics is one of those things that you don't. Not very many people mention that because they're just like, oh, you just got a kitchen table chair, it's fine. But you're right. I mean, when you think about it in an office, I mean, offices do put money into getting nice chairs for their
Right.
employees. And, we take that sort of for granted if you're working for a company. However, when you get home and your chair is whatever, then, there is a reason why those chairs are made that way. Um, and you mentioned the standing desk. So a lot of people have mentioned this over the last little while. And is like, how did you come across that? Like, is this like backed by studies and stuff like that, or is this just a preference of yours?
Yeah, I'm sure there is some research, although I don't have that, so I won't quote it. But it's definitely been a preference, kind of a learned preference for me. And it really stems back to, today I'm not in the office nearly as much. I'm not sitting at the desk all day, but there was a period 3, 4 years ago where I was putting in 8, 10, 12-hour days in my home office. And you get tired, and part of the reason that I got tired was just sitting there all day. And so things like going for a quick walk to get a boost of energy or some fresh air, but also just standing for a few minutes, really seemed to help. So I definitely can't take credit for the idea, and there's lots of people that were doing it long before I was, but I'm a big believer in it. If it makes sense for you, if it works for you, and there's lots of ways you can do it. The one I have is electronic, so I can hit a button and it raises and lowers, but there's manual ones. And you don't have to get fancy. If budget is tight and buying a standing desk is not possible, you can get some boxes and stack them on top of your existing desk and move that chair out of the way for half an hour a day and put your laptop up on the boxes and kind of create your own standing desk.
Yeah, I think you can get some pretty affordable ones as well. But yeah, I think you're right because I do like to get up frequently and take like just pace around or take a walk or do something like that. Because yeah, sitting down for too long actually does hurt. But I like the idea of having a standing desk because then you can. I mean, if you got a lot of work to do, then maybe you don't have time to get out and go for a little
Right.
walk. So this would work out really well. Now, I want to move to the next topic of talking about putting together a band and finding some people around you that can help you get work done. I'm wondering, how do you approach, subcontracting, delegating, just having the right people around you?
Yeah, it's such a great question, Tim. A couple of points there. One is I think I'm a big believer in learning as much as you can about the things that you're doing. So if you're running a business, I think it's important that you understand at a high level the things that you're going to be asking other people to do for you. And that works nicely with most startups, which have to be lean. Most of us don't have big venture capital when we're starting a new venture. We're scrapping together and we're hustling and we're grinding. And so there's not always a lot of cash flow to go out and hire right away, but that's a great opportunity to get your hands dirty. I've done almost everything in our business, from customer service to sourcing to, graphic design to managing supplier relationships to, having a hand on the finances. Now, that doesn't mean that I'm the best person to do all or even any of those things. So I'm a big believer in not being afraid to do as much as you have to yourself to get started. But the second point that follows nicely on the back of that is I'm also a big believer in delegating as quickly as it makes sense for you and your business. The reality is that all of the little things that have to be done on a daily basis to keep a business running are usually not really difficult, complex things. And in a vacuum, they may not be that time consuming, but when you add them all together, it's a lot of time, it's a lot of effort, it's a lot of mental and creative bandwidth that you're taking off the table and out of your bank, if you will. And so offloading some of those things to other people, whether it's a contractor on a part-time basis or if it's a full-fledged employee, frees you up as the business owner, as the founder, to do whatever it is that you want to do and whatever it is that you do best. And I think that's the final point, and the lesson I've learned is that, I get more, I get more juice out of the squeeze, if you will, if I really focus on the things that bring me joy and that I'm really good at. And so for me, that's things that are more in the creative space, product development, thinking about advertising campaigns, thinking about ways to communicate and better serve our customers, and managing high level relationships with suppliers or investors, other stakeholders. And I let my team take care of other things. And for some people, that may be the opposite. They may be number crunchers. They may be data analytics freaks, and that's okay too. There's nothing wrong with that, but really play to your strengths and rely on people around you for the rest.
Yeah. I like what you said earlier about how, having a good understanding of what you're asking people to do. Because I know that I've heard a few of the guests actually talk about that as being their bad note of not really understanding the tasks that they were delegating out, and then ending up finding someone that couldn't do the task or
Right.
wasn't doing it the way that. So I think a lot of us do start off as solopreneurs and we're sort of like wearing all these hats. And so in that case, it would make it natural for you to kind of like build together some systems, figure out exactly what you're doing, and then start to hand those things off to other people. And I also like what you said about how, keep the things that make you feel good. Because
Yeah.
I find that's one of the things you're like, oh, well, I've got this all, systemized. So I'm just going to off put it over here. And then I'm going to do this thing over here that I don't even like doing.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Nothing says that just because you're a founder or a CEO or the owner of a business that you have to do, you have to sit in meetings all day with the accountant, or that you have to, spend all of your time with certain tasks. There's a lot of leeway, there's a lot of flexibility there. And I find that most of us, do a better job when we're doing the things that bring us joy, that bring us happiness, when we play to our natural strengths. And so I think you're exactly right. When you start to build out that band, when you start to add members to it, you're looking for people that can do those things. And, my litmus test is always, I want someone that can do those things better than I can. And most of the time that's not hard, because I don't do graphic design well at all. I don't do customer service well. There's so many things. I'm not a numbers guy. A spreadsheet opens up on my computer and my eyes gloss over. I'm that kind of guy, right? But I don't have a problem admitting that and finding someone where that is their strength. That's what brings them joy. That's what they would do all day if they could. So if you can create back to the band analogy, right? Your bass player loves playing bass, right? He's not sitting there going, oh, I really wish I could play the drums, and your drummer is not sitting there pining to be the lead singer. In most cases, they know what their strength is, they play to it, and that's what creates the beautiful harmony.
Exactly. And they've got their own lane that they're going down. And that way you're not stepping on each other's toes as well.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, which I think is another problem that might happen too, is that you're sort of like got this control thing where you're trying to get someone to do something the way that you would do it. How do you go about, like, do you have a problem with that at all? No.
Yeah, that's something I've gotten better at over the years. I think some of these things are learned, and some are natural. But letting go and trusting other people was not natural to me. It definitely was more learned. And I think it's a slow process. You can't snap your fingers and just hand off the reins to someone. It's about building trust. But in certain areas, it's imperative to let people who are better than you, who have strengths in areas that you are a little bit weaker, have more oversight, have more control. And one of the best ways, Tim, I have found to kind of overcome that natural hesitation that so many of us have to let go of the reins and let go of control, is to measure outcomes. And what I mean by that is, I have an executive assistant now that manages my schedule, manages my email, does so many really crucial tasks, and frees me up to do the things that I enjoy and that I'm good at. And the way that I used to manage those things is completely different from the way that she does now. Like, she has systems and processes and methodologies, and I don't get into the weeds. If it works for her and the outcome is a good outcome, then I'm fine with it. So rather than managing the process, look at, try to quantify and measure the outcome, and that can help.
Totally agree 100%. Like, and I think this kind of leads well to the whole work at home rockstar kind of theme, where we're all running our own business the way that we want to run it, and the way that makes us happy. And all we're doing when we go to get a client is we're solving a problem and we're giving them an outcome. So why does it matter how they did it, as long as the outcome is the one that you want, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And everyone has their own way of doing things, and there may be some things that are critical. That's another tip, is you can kind of divide, and you can almost grab a sheet of paper and draw a line down the middle and say, hey, these things are mission critical and they must be done this way, right? And those, for some businesses, might be things that involve finances being handled a certain way, or legal matters, or health and safety matters. And so in those areas, it's totally okay to train people and to say, these things must be done this way. If you have any questions, let me know. But for the other things, for the daily grind, the ins and outs of running a business, whatever that is for you, if you have the right people, and you've allowed them to see your vision and to buy into the vision and to get excited about it, and you've given them the tools that they need to be successful, give them the freedom to break some things, to make some mistakes, to find that new way of doing things. Because in my case, I'm usually surprised at how much better a solution they'll come up with than the one that I previously had.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Yeah, you'll be surprised by how well they can solve the problems if they're, especially if they're approaching it in a different way than you have. I mean, they'll come up with things that you never even thought of, which also, lends well to the music analogy. A lot of times when you have a certain way that you need to play something, you're not going to come up with something special.
Right.
Whereas when you release the reins and you allow people to explore with whatever it is, then sometimes you can end up with some very, very creative outcomes that just enhance the song.
Absolutely. 100%.
Yeah. So now what about getting fans? So I mean, you can have all your systems and processes in place, but if you've got nobody, looking at what you're doing, then you got really nothing. So I'm
Yeah.
wondering, how do you go about gathering those fans?
Yeah, it's so important, right? And everyone needs fans. Everyone needs customers, right? No matter what you're doing, no matter who you're serving. So a couple of things. I think number one, get really specific about that question. Who is it that we're serving? I see so many businesses, and I certainly made this mistake for years, just trying to be too broad, trying to be everything to everyone, trying to solve every problem any way that people want it. And when you do that, you end up serving no one well. And so I think getting really specific about who it is that you're trying to serve, and how you want to serve them. So in my case, when I started a pet products company 8 years ago, I didn't know anything about pet products. I didn't know anything about e-commerce. I had to learn it all as I went, and I had a lot of amazing mentors and teachers and friends along the way that helped out. But it was definitely a journey. And one of the mistakes I made in the early days was not being specific about who it was that we were serving. And now we've gotten that button down. We know who it is that we're serving, and in a broad kind of touchy feely marketing way, it's people, it's pets and their parents that are experiencing common problems, and we solve those things, whether it's a puppy that's chewing on the rug, or the cat scratching the drapes, or the dog that has bad breath. We try to solve those common problems, and it's so much easier when you know who it is that you're trying to serve. And the second thing I would say is, you need to let your fans be the hero in the story. And so as business owners, we make the mistake so many times of making ourselves the hero, right? And so we want to have people see us as the hero that swooped in and saved the day. The problem with that, and there's a lot of great detail in a wonderful book by Donald Miller called Brand Story. And our customers want to be the hero in their own story. So we need to see ourselves as someone, as an entity, as a product, as an organization that can help them to become the hero and solve the problem that they're facing. And we can help and play that role, but we're not the hero ourselves.
Wow. That's pretty deep. And it's absolutely true. I mean, I'm even kind of taking notes for myself, because you do sort of like write your marketing in a way that, like, oh, this client was having such a problem and we just swooped right in and saved them. and
Yeah.
and I think you're right. I think that from the fan perspective, that seems a little bit arrogant, doesn't it?
Well, it's arrogant, and it just misses the mark. It's the wrong note, so to speak. So if you think about the concert, why is a concert so much of a different experience than listening to a track, whether it's on an LP or on the radio station or on a CD or on Spotify these days? Is the thing. Well, anyone that's been to a live concert, and I'm certainly missing them right now. I can't wait for that chance again, hopefully soon. But it's a different experience, and it's a different experience because you're there. You're a part of the process. You feel the music vibrating through your bones. It's the sights, it's the smells, it's the whole thing. And so I think the key is to let our fans, let our customers be a part of that experience, so that we're not talking to them, we're including them in that experience.
Yep, I can add to that. So as a performer, and as a fan, both on both sides of the spectrum, actually, let's look at it from the fan perspective. You're at a concert and the artist is on stage and they are just killing it. They're just performing the best they can, but it's almost like we don't even exist. They're doing their
Right.
thing, right? Versus you're at a concert and the artist comes out to the front, they hand the mic to the crowd, and the
Yes.
crowd's singing along with their song, and then they're coming back and maybe they're singing terribly to the song.
Right.
Do you care? Is that a better experience or worse experience or the same?
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
I think from the perspective of a performer and seeing this happen, the fans get more into it when the artist is given the mic to the fans, even though it's not as perfect as if the artist had been singing it themselves. And I
Yeah,
think that probably lends well to the business as well. When you bring the audience into your experience, everybody has a better experience that way.
absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. It's essential, and the good ones do it really well, right? They'll pick out people in the audience. They'll, crack a joke or flirt with somebody on the front row, or talk about somebody who's holding a sign way back in the back, or turn the lights on so that they can see the audience. They'll appreciate the audience. They're including them. They're allowing them to be the hero of that show, and instead of just being a participant, a bystander, watching a performance.
Agree 100%. So it's time for your guest solo. Speaking of which, so tell me what's exciting in your business right now.
Yeah, thanks so much, Tim. And again, thanks for having me on. What's exciting to me is that after working remotely for a decade, I wrote a book, and it really, the idea came in the initial weeks of the pandemic and the lockdowns. And I saw so many people working from home for the first time. And I saw them making the same mistakes that I had made. And I wanted to do something. I said, there's some humor here, but there's also an opportunity to help and to learn some myself. So I wrote a book called Always Wear Pants and 99 Other Tips for Surviving and Thriving While You Work from Home. And it's 100 tips. They're all short, a page and a half, and it's things that help with productivity and purpose and creating the right environment, and getting more done and being happier in the process, whatever that is, while you work from home. And I have to tell you, it was a real pleasure to write the book, and I, expected to teach and to share the tips and the things that had worked for me, but I learned just as much in the process by asking other people about their experiences and by talking with people about their journey to working remotely. So it's been a lot of fun, and I hope if people are interested, they'll check it out. And it's been a really worthwhile and fulfilling thing for me.
Wow. Well, I gotta say it's a clever name because having worked from home for the last decade as well, always wear pants. Very clever.
Yeah, I thought, if there was one thing that was important, and I've never been this guy, but we've all seen or at least heard of that guy or that girl who's working from home, they're on a video call, something happens, they stand up, and lo and behold, they're not wearing pants. So I thought, if there's one thing that people need to know, it's to always wear pants. Doesn't matter what pants. They can be sweatpants, they can be basketball shorts. In the summer down here in Texas, that's usually my favorite. But save yourself from being that guy or that girl.
Yeah, I like the pajama pants myself, but
Nice, nice.
or the sweatpants. But that's awesome. So how do we find out more about, where do we get the book? How do we find out more about your business?
Yeah, thanks so much, Tim. You can find the book anywhere books are sold. Alwayswearpants.com is a great place to check out. Amazon, Barnes and Noble, pretty much any place that books are sold. And I appreciate it so much.
And what about your business, your pet business?
Yeah, so you can go to emmysbestpets.com, and you can purchase our products there. You can learn more about us and our team and the problems that we solve. It's also available. The products are also available online at Amazon and Chewy and Walmart.com. Lots of places online. So Google is your friend.
Awesome. Right on. Well, thank you so much for rocking out with me today, Kevin. This has been a lot of fun.
Tim, the pleasure was all mine. Thank you so much.
To the listeners, make sure you subscribe, rate, and comment. We'll see you next time on the Work at Home Rockstar Podcast.